Let's open with a word of prayer.
A začneme modlitbou.
Holy God,
Svätý Bože,
you are everything to us.
znamenáš všetko pre nás.
I want to personally thank you for all that you do in my life.
A chcem ti osobne poďakovať za všetko, čo robíš v mojom živote.
How you've led me all these many years to this point.
A ako si ma viedol počas tých mnohých rokov k tomuto bodu.
I know my experience is mirrored in the lives of many people.
A viem, že moja skúsenosť je takisto daná v životoch mnohých
You've led
ľudí.
each of us individually to this point.
Viedol si mnohých z nás individuálne k tomuto bodu.
As we anticipate the soon coming Sunday law,
A ako my sme účastní blízkeho príchodu nedeľného
we see its
zákona,
agitation throughout society.
vidíme jeho agitáciu skrze spoločnosť.
Help each of us
Pomôž každému z nás,
to make an intellectual,
aby sme to urobili intelektuálne,
an emotional,
a
and a
emocionálne,
spiritual preparation.
aj duchovne, aby sme urobili prípravu.
In Jesus' name.
V Ježišovom mene. Amen.
Welcome back.
Vítajte späť.
I apologize. I know we're having technical difficulties at this camp meeting, but things happen.
Ospravedlňujem sa, že máme technické zložitosti alebo problémy.
So in our last study,
A v našom poslednom štúdiu
we began discussing the subject of Sabbath keeping.
sme začali diskutovať o probléme zachovávania soboty.
And as is always the case,
A tak ako je to vždy, tak
people have very strong opinions on how we keep the Sabbath,
ľudia majú veľmi také silné názory ohľadne toho, ako máme zachovávať sobotu.
and how we should relate not only to God, but the world in which we live.
A ako máme sa správať nielen k Bohu, ale aj vo svete, v ktorom žijeme.
I changed the context after that discussion
Ja som zmenil kontext po tejto diskusii,
to deal with a related subject,
aby sme jednali s podobnými
which is
témami,
the subject
alebo podobnou
of
témou, ktorou je téma
1850 history
histórie 1850,
that relates to slavery.
ktorá je v súvislosti s otroctvom.
And we find
Ktorá
all
súvisí
of
s
this
otroctvom.
in the book Early Writings,
A my toto všetko nachádzame v knihe Ranné spisy,
which we know is a compilation of
čo vieme, že je
a couple of books.
kompilácia zo pár kníh.
One of them is Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1.
A jedna z nich je Duchovné dary, zväzok 1.
So we discussed all of that in the words that are on the board.
Takže my sme hovorili o tom všetkom a máme to na tabuli.
We then went to the 1888 history,
Potom sme išli do histórie 1888
and we saw that the test that was confronting, we'll say, God's people,
a videli sme, že skúška, ktorá konfrontovala Boží ľud,
we could also say the United States,
a mohli by sme tiež povedať Spojené štáty,
it was a Protestant phenomena.
bol to protestantský fenomén.
It wasn't a
A nebolo
Catholic-led
to-
initiative.
Nebola to katolícky vedená iniciatíva.
And we use the term apostate Protestantism, or at least Ellen White does.
A používame termín odpadlý protestantizmus, alebo Ellen Whiteová to používa.
And we see that as a singular test.
A vidíme to ako jednu skúšku.
When we go to an earlier history, nearly 40 years before,
Keď ideme do skoršej histórie, asi 40 rokov predtým,
we know the history.
poznáme tú históriu.
We know about the fugitive slave law.
A poznáme ten Fugitive Slave Act, alebo ten zákon o
We
otrokoch.
know about the Civil War
A poznáme
and the steps
občiansku
that led
vojnu.
up to all of those things happening.
A tie kroky, ktoré viedli ku všetkým týmto veciam, ktoré sa diali.
The Great Compromise.
Veľký kompromis.
And we put that all together by saying that 1850 is the Sunday law.
A my sme to dali všetko dohromady a povedali sme, že 1850 je nedelný zákon.
We have the close of probation,
Máme záver milosti,
the time of trouble,
čas slúženia.
ending with the second advent.
A to končí druhým príchodom.
So that's as far as we got in our previous study.
Takže to je to, ako ďaleko sme sa dostali v našej predošlej štúdii.
So in the 1888 history,
Takže v histórii 1888,
when we compare that to the 1850 history,
keď to porovnáme s históriou 1850,
we saw that that was slavery.
a videli sme, že to bolo otroctvo.
At least that's what someone placed here.
A to je minimálne to, čo tu niekto dal.
And that's the Declaration of Human Rights or Civil Rights.
A to je tá deklarácia ľudských práv alebo občianskych práv.
So I have a question.
Takže mám otázku.
We've moved around 40 years into the future.
Posunuli sme sa asi 40 rokov do budúcnosti.
Susan, why
Susan,
is slavery not here?
prečo otroctvo nie je tu?
Why is it only a singular issue now of Sunday?
Prečo je to len taký jednotlivý test alebo taký konkrétny test na nedelu? Alebo o nedeli.
So Susan said it's no longer the test.
Takže Susan hovorí, že už to nie je skúškou.
So why is it no longer the test, Susan? Why did God
Takže
say
Susan, prečo
it
to
was
už
a
nie je
test
skúškou?
and now it's not a test? Why did God change God's
Prečo
mind?
Boh mení svoj názor? Alebo postoj.
She said different dispensation.
Ona hovorí iná epocha, iné obdobie.
Okay, I think that was code word for saying I'm not sure.
Takže dobre, to bolo také zakodované slovo,
Okay, so
povedať, že nie
some
som
of
si
us
istá.
may not be sure,
Takže niektorí z nás si nie sú istí,
but I want us to be sure that something has changed,
ale chcem, aby sme si boli istí, že niečo sa zmenilo.
that we haven't missed anything.
A že sme nič nezmeškali.
Gloria?
Alebo nevynechali.
United States local to Christendom?
Okay, so Gloria says we went from the United States back.
Takže Gloria hovorí,
Gloria-
že sme išli od Spojených štátov tohto,
So 1850 was a US issue.
takže 1850 rok bol problém Ameriky.
And she says maybe the 1888 is a Christendom issue.
A ona hovorí, že možno 1888 je problém kresťanstva.
Okay, so do you
Dobre.
mean that this was United States government and this is the United States churches? Is that what you mean?
Znamená to, že toto je vláda Spojených štátov a toto sú cirkvi Spojených štátov? To je to, čo myslíš?
So she said yes.
Takže ona hovorí áno.
So then that would sort of mean like it was a state and then a church issue.
Takže ona hovorí, že to by znamenalo, že toto je najprv štát a potom je
So
ten
what
problém
did someone
cirkvi.
say in this history
Takže čo ak
is
niekto povie,
happening here on this date?
že to, čo sa deje v týchto dejinách, sa deje tu v tomto dátume.
That we mark or we picked up.
A čo sme označili, alebo
Sorry?
že sme ho vybrali.
Law.
Ja neviem.
So we had a law here.
Ale takže máme tu zákon.
Do you agree with that, Gloria? And
Súhlasíš s tým, Gloria?
hence state.
A štát.
And in this history,
A v týchto dejinách,
the 1888 history,
v dejinách 1888,
we know that it didn't go far enough,
my vieme, že to neišlo dosť ďaleko.
but what's being proposed here?
Ale čo bolo tuto navrhnuté?
A law.
Zákon.
So it's a law here too.
Takže tu je tiež zákon.
So Gloria, if it's a law in both histories,
Takže Gloria, ak je tuto zákon v oboch dejinách,
would it be fair to say that this was state and this would be Christendom?
bolo by férové povedať, že toto je štát a toto je kresťanstvo?
No. No, it wouldn't be fair to say that. Yeah, yeah.
Nebolo by to férové to povedať.
So it's a state-driven initiative
Takže je to štátom riadená
in
iniciatíva
50,
v roku 50
and it's a state-driven initiative in
a je to
88.
štátom riadená iniciatíva v 1888.
You agree with that? Okay.
Súhlasíš?
So
Dobre.
when the state says we want to make a law,
Takže keď štát hovorí, že chceme urobiť zákon,
people are going to say, why?
ľudia povedia prečo.
Defend your position.
Obráň svoju pozíciu. Obráňte svoju
And they're
pozíciu.
not going to say, we just like taking holidays.
A nepovedia, že máme radi dovolenku.
What's the reason for this law? What's behind it?
A aký je dôvod, alebo čo je za týmto zákonom?
You said it was.
Povedala si, že to bolo,
So she says church
takže ona hovorí, že cirkev,
or Christendom.
alebo kresťanstvo.
So here
Takže
in
tu,
this history,
v týchto dejinách,
they have this slavery,
oni majú to otroctvo
and people are going to say,
a ľudia
justify
povedia,
it.
ospravedlňte ho.
And is a farmer going to say, I make lots of money on the backs of human beings?
A povie farmár, že zarábam veľa peňazí na chrbte ľudských
They
na
might
úkor
believe that, but
ľudských
they're not going to
bytostí.
use that argument.
Že oni to môžu veriť, ale nepoužijú ten
What
argument.
argument will they use?
Aký argument oni použijú?
The Bible. They will use the Bible.
Ten argument bol, že zarábajú na nich veľa
Christendom.
peňazí, ale oni použijú argument, že
So there's not
Biblia
much
alebo
difference between the
kresťanstvo.
two, really.
Takže medzi tými dvoma nie je až taký rozdiel.
So my question then was,
Takže moja otázka bola potom,
we're in this history, the 1888
sme v
history,
týchto dejinách 1888,
but there's no slavery being addressed now.
ale tu sa nehovorí už o otroctve.
Why?
Prečo?
It's an issue of the immigration.
Okay, so there are other issues, but why slavery not here anymore?
Takže
You
sú
say it's-
aj iné problémy, ale prečo tu nie je otroctvo?
Slavery.
Okay, so my question is, why is slavery not here, part of this test or the test?
Moja otázka je, že prečo to otroctvo nie je tu súčasťou tej skúšky, alebo tá skúška, prečo nie je?
And this was all state.
A toto všetko bol štát.
And Kathy said,
A Katy hovorí,
somewhere in this 40-year history,
niekde v týchto dejinách
the state addresses the slavery issue.
štát hovorí o tom probléme
So it's
otroctva.
no longer an issue anymore.
Takže už to nie je
So
viac
all those
problém.
greedy farmers in this history,
Takže všetci títo chamtiví farmári v týchto
the state says,
dejinách, štát
suffer, we
hovorí,
don't care.
trpte, nezaujíma nás to.
And all those pastors in this history,
A všetci tí pastori, kazatelia v týchto dejinách,
the government says,
vláda hovorí,
we don't care about you either.
nezaujímate nás ani vy.
Somewhere in this history, there's a change
Ale
about
niekde-
slavery.
Ale niekde v tejto histórii je tu zmena o otroctve, ohľadne otroctva.
Yes? Okay. Claudia.
Claudio?
Yes, yes.
We know
because of the charismatic structure of Eden to Eden.
We know that there's a chiasm, and that model is Eden to Eden.
Vieme, že je chiasmus a ten model je z Edena do Edena.
So following that previous the mirror, we know that from Eve, the sin of Eden, then came Cain, the worship, and then came slavery. So that's a mirror images, and now we're seeing the same thing replicated on this side where we are living. And sometimes it's misleading the Sunday law as a name, because that's in general is the mark of the beast.
Okay, so Claudio has said,
Takže Claudio povedal,
based upon an Eden to Eden chiastic model,
na základe chiastického modelu z Edena do Edena,
he said there were 3 issues at the beginning,
on
and there will be
povedal,
3
že
at the end.
sú 3 problémy na začiatku a budú 3 problémy na konci.
He said the third one was slavery,
Povedal, že tretí bol otroctvo,
which would mean the first one would be slavery.
to znamená, že prvý bude otroctvo.
And he's saying this issue here
A on hovorí, že tento problém tu
is fixed somewhere in this history.
je fixovaný niekde tu v týchto dejinách.
Have I represented you accurately? He said yes. And that's what Kathy was saying, yes?
A to je to, čo hovorila tiež Katy.
Okay, are we all in agreement with this?
A všetci s týmto súhlasíme?
No mistakes?
Nie sú tu chyby?
I have to say that because they blame me for making the mistake. They honestly do. Say I should know better.
Musím to povedať, lebo ma potom vinia za to, že som robím
Okay,
chyby.
so when is that law?
Takže kedy je ten zákon?
Do we know the date? Put your hand up, anybody? Kathy?
Katy?
1863.
1863.
What is the law in 1863?
Takže aký je zákon v roku 1863?
The Emancipation Law.
Zákon
so-
emancipácie.
Kathy wants to put that law in 1863.
Takže Katy chce dať ten zákon 1863.
Anyone else?
Ešte
Will
niekto?
we agree with that?
Súhlasíte?
Suellen?
Súhlasím.
There was a law that was that pertained to the southern states. Emancipation proclamation. It pertained to the southern states, but there were like 4 northern states that didn't become law until later.
Okay, so I'm not sure what to write.
Nie som si istý, čo mám napísať.
So I'm gonna leave the comment from Sue Ellen because I'm not sure what I don't have something definitive to say on that. Anyone else?
Nechám ten koment od Suelen a neviem, by som tam napísal, tak je ešte niekto?
Okay, I can't ask anybody who's online because we don't have chat enabled.
Nemôžem sa pýtať nikoho, kto je online, pretože nemáme ten chat k dispozícii.
The threat changed? What does that mean? She
Hrozba sa
said that the
zmenila.
threat changed. What does that mean?
Povedala, že sa zmenila hrozba. Čo to znamená?
Slaves would hard them, so they wanted to put them to slavery, but not in 1888. They wanted to control the Jews, there's thinkers that didn't agree, so they wanted to enforce something.
So in this history, the
Takže v
issue is
týchto
about
dejinách
slavery
problém je o otroctve.
and the control that people want over this group of people.
A kontrola, ktorú ľudia chcú nad touto skupinou ľudí.
And in the 1888 history,
A v histórii 1888
there's a similar dynamic
je tam podobná dynamika.
It's not slavery per se,
ale nie je to otroctvo,
but it's control of three groups: Adventism, Mormons,
ale je to kontrola troch skupín.
Adventism, Jews, and immigrants.
Adventizmu, Židov a imigrantov.
Anyone else?
Ešte niekto?
So, what about the amendments?
A čo s dodatkami?
Go ahead. The 14th Amendment,
14.
number?
dodatok?
1-4? 1-3. Okay, so we've got the 13th Amendment.
Takže máme 13. dodatok.
Someone will give me the date for that.
Ak by ste mi niekto dali dátum,
As they're looking,
a keď to hľadáte,
the 63 date,
ten dátum 63,
even though it's valid, it's in the midst of the Civil War.
aj keď je to platné, tak je to v strede občianskej vojny.
So it's not a federally recognized law, if I can put it that way.
Takže nie je to federálne rozpoznaný zákon, ak by som to mohol tak povedať.
So we've got 1865,
Takže máme 1865
and it's the 13th Amendment,
a je to 13. dodatok,
which basically does away with slavery.
a čo robí, vlastne odstraňuje to
And that's why
otroctvo.
in this
To je dôvod,
history,
prečo v
there
týchto
is no
dejinách
slavery. It's not part of the test.
už nie je otroctvo, nie je to súčasťou tej skúšky.
So what Adventism has done,
Takže to, čo urobil adventizmus,
it's been selective in its review of history,
vyberal si v tom
has focused
pohľade na
on
dejiny
the later history, the 1888
a
period,
sústredil sa na tie posledné dejiny v období
and says it's a
1888
singular test.
a povedal, že to je tá jedna skúška.
Sabbath and Sunday.
Sobota a nedela.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on that?
Má niekto nejaké otázky alebo komenty?
Okay, so now this movement has been raised up,
Takže teraz toto hnutie povstalo.
and if we go to its inception,
Ak pôjdeme na jeho počiatok,
for the first few decades,
a k,
we were in
jeho
complete
prvým
agreement
dekadám
with this model,
sme v úplnom súhlase s týmto modelom,
the Adventist model, I mean.
tým adventistickým modelom.
The movement knew all of these dates.
Hnutie poznalo všetky tieto dátumy,
It had some clues about maybe
malo nejaké
50
kľúče
being the Sunday law,
o tom, že 1850 bol nedeľný zákon,
depending on what studies one would look at,
v závislosti od toho, na akú štúdiu by sme sa pozreli.
because why? I don't know if people are familiar with some of the earlier studies.
Neviem,
Why
či ľudia
didn't we have
poznajú
an
niektoré
awareness
tie,
of this?
tie ranné štúdie. Prečo sme mali o tomto také povedomie?
Before Elder Tess brought this study to us.
Predtým, ako staršia test priniesla túto štúdiu pred nás, alebo
Okay.
k nám.
No, why we knew that this was a Sunday law.
Prečo sme vedeli, že toto bol nedeľný zákon?
Someone just asked a question and I didn't. They just wanted clarification. Claudia,
The chart, no, we were internally, we have to.
so my question was: before Elder Tessie's study, we had an awareness of this framework,
Moja otázka bola, že pred štúdiou staršej test my sme mali povedomie o tomto rámci.
and I asked about 1850 and the Sunday law,
A ja som sa opýtal na rok 1850 a nedeľný
and
zákon.
Claudio mentioned the chart,
A Claudio spomenul tú kartu, alebo
the 1850 chart.
tú kartu 1850.
You want to say more?
There is a Sabbath there, and there's more in the church went into the Laodicean condition at that moment.
So, tell me a bit more about Sunday law and the chart.
That in the chart of 1843 there was no Sabbath. Everybody was a Sunday keeping.
So the 1850 chart mentions Sabbath,
Takže tá tabuľka alebo karta 1850 spomína
George.
sobotu.
What does it not mention on the
George,
chart?
čo sa nespomína na tej karte?
Yeah. Just look around her. What doesn't it mention?
Čo sa tam nespomína?
If you need help, it doesn't mention slavery.
Nespomína sa tam otroctvo.
And that chart was created for a purpose.
A tá karta bola vytvorená za účelom.
Jim, what was the chart created for? What's its purpose, its
A na čo
function?
bola vytvorená? Aký je jej zámer a jej funkcia?
You're not sure? Just say not sure. That's fine. Kathy, what's the purpose of
Kathy?
this chart?
Aký je zámer tejto karty?
Go ahead.
To prepare people for the second coming of Jesus.
So Kathy says it's to prepare people for the second advent.
Takže Katy hovorí, že je to na to, aby pripravila ľudí na druhý príchod.
Kathy, which people?
Katy, ktorých ľudí?
So Kathy says the world.
Katy hovorí svet.
So this chart was
Takže táto
created
karta
as an
bola vytvorená
evangelistic tool
ako evangelizačný nástroj.
it's an aid or a helper
Ako nejaká pomoc
to go to the world to tell them about the second advent.
ísť do sveta a povedať im o druhom príchode.
And in order to do that,
A na to, aby sa to mohlo spraviť,
what does the church, the movement, see fit to put on this chart?
čo cirkev videla za správne, že aby tam dala na túto kartu.
Kathy, what does it see fit to put on that chart?
A Katy, čo tam dali na túto kartu?
So it sees fit to put the Sabbath on the chart,
Takže oni tam dali sobotu
and it misses what?
a chýba tam čo?
It misses slavery.
Chýba tam otroctvo.
Okay. David,
David,
why?
prečo?
I'll give you two options.
Dám ti dve možnosti.
They make a mistake,
Urobili chybu,
an oversight.
Prehliadnutie,
It's not on their radar.
proste nebolo to na ich
All
radare
that means they did something wrong.
a to znamená, že oni urobili niečo zlé.
So is this a wrong chart,
Takže je toto chybná karta,
or
chybná tabulka, alebo
they did everything correct
urobili všetko správne
and it wasn't supposed to be on the chart?
a nemalo to byť na tej tabulke.
So the two options are
Takže sú tu dve možnosti.
dealing with the subject of slavery only.
Ak sa bavíme o tej téme
Why
otroctva,
is it not on there?
prečo to nie je tam?
Mistake,
Chyba,
or it's not supposed to be on there? It's
alebo nemalo to
deliberate.
tam byť.
And I'm not talking about the consciousness of the human,
A ja nehovorím o vedomí,
unless we
no.
say it's a human mistake.
ak by sme nehovorili, že je to
Thanks.
ľudská chyba.
So David says,
Takže David hovorí,
it's a good chart,
je to dobrá karta
and it wasn't supposed to be on there.
a nemalo to tam byť.
Okay, so tell me what others of you think.
Povedzte mi, čo si ďalší z vás myslíte.
They were not supposed to be involved in politics. The external events, they only were internally. God was leading them. They didn't want it to be involved with the societal.
So Gloria says,
Takže Gloria hovorí,
maybe
možno
the reason it's not on there
že dôvod tu nie je,
is because they were not meant to get involved in politics.
pretože oni nemali byť zapojení do politiky,
In voting.
In voting,
do volenia.
they had a higher purpose.
Oni mali vyšší zámer.
She didn't say that, but I kind of alluded to that.
Ona to nepovedala, ale ja som to k tomu pridal.
Did you want to say anything more?
Ešte chceš
Okay, so
povedať niečo?
they didn't want to get involved in
Takže oni
the
nechceli byť
political mayhem of the day.
zapojení v tom politickom chaose v tých časoch,
They had a higher calling,
ale oni mali vyššie povolanie,
second advent.
druhý príchod.
And for them, the most important thing was to put the Sabbath in there.
A pre nich tá najdôležitejšia vec bola, že tam dali sobotu.
Okay, so does anybody else have any thoughts?
Máte ešte niekto nejaké myšlienky?
Nobody has any thoughts? I saw you had.
Nikto?
Susan,
Susan,
you don't have any thoughts?
máš nejaké myšlienky?
Just or no will do. Okay, do you have any? She said no, she doesn't have any questions.
Povedala,
Susan, do you have any
nemám
concerns?
žiadne otázky. Máš nejaké znepokojenie, alebo
Yes or no?
áno, alebo nie?
Okay, so she has some concerns, but she can't verbalize them.
Takže ona má nejaké znepokojenie, ale nevie to
Okay,
verbalizovať.
so Parminder, should Susan have some concerns? Yes, she should.
Parminder, mala by mať Susan nejaké znepokojenie?
So
Áno,
my
mala by
question
mať.
is,
Takže moja otázka je,
why should you have a concern?
prečo by ste mali byť znepokojení?
When we think about everything that we've discussed that's on the board and this person's question.
Keď hovoríte o všetkom, čo sme hovorili a čo je na tejto tabuli a v súvislosti s tou otázkou.
You don't have to answer that question, but you would make another point.
Well,
Kathy?
maybe it does answer it is they were supposed to be thinking politically. They should have been taking the whole picture in.
So Kathy says,
Takže Kathy hovorí,
perhaps they did something wrong
že možno oni urobili niečo
and
nesprávne
they should have been looking at the bigger picture,
a oni sa mali pozerať na väčší obraz.
which means they should have been looking at the signs of the times, what was going on in the world.
Čo znamená, že oni sa mali pozerať na to znamenie času, o čo ide v tom
Is that
svete.
fair representation?
The outside world, the outside of the church.
Sure. So,
They needed to be taking in what was going on around them in the world. Yes.
did you want to add anything? Because you said that before. No?
That's
Okay. So Kathy just summarized what she'd already said, so I won't repeat that.
Takže Kathy len zosumarizovala, čo už povedala, takže nebudem
So
to
my
opakovať.
question is what?
Moja otázka je čo?
What's
Alebo
my question,
otázka je
Susan?
čo? Aká je moja otázka?
Sorry? Why? Yeah, we should have a concern.
Mali by sme byť znepokojení,
Kathy.
alebo mali by sme mať pripomienky. Alebo obavy.
You could what? Okay, so Kathy says,
Takže Kathy hovorí,
if this is the message to the world,
ak je toto posolstvo svetu,
and slavery's not on it,
a otroctvo tam nie je,
then when you go to the world
tak keď idete do sveta
and say, get your life in order,
a poviete, napravte svoj život,
it doesn't include dealing with slavery.
tak nie je
Is that
vlastne,
kind of what you said?
nie je to
Okay.
súčasť toho, nie je otroctvo. Alebo,
George,
že nie je
what are your thoughts?
s tým problémom otroctva. George,
What are your
aké sú tvoje
concerns,
myšlienky,
if
aké
any?
sú tvoje obavy, ak nejaké sú?
1850 charts aligned with the Sunday law waymark.
So,
A testing message.
so Georgia says that
Takže
the
George
1850
hovorí,
chart
že-
aligns with the Sunday law testing message.
že tá karta 1850 je v súvislosti
Okay.
so,
Go ahead.
v súvislosti s tou skúšobným posolstvom,
But the test was on slavery, but the message was about the new stuff added to the charts was the Sabbath and sanctuary. There's no warning about slavery.
So Georgia said,
takže George povedal,
we have a model
že my máme model,
that says the test
ktorý
is
hovorí, že
slavery.
skúška je otroctvo.
1850 slave law,
1850
the
zákon o otroctve,
compromise,
alebo teda kompromis,
which ends up leading to the Civil War,
čo vedie k občianskej vojne.
and then the government has to deal with that issue between 63 and 65.
A potom vláda musí s tým problémom jednať medzi tými rokmi 63
That
a
is the
65.
test that's facing, we'll say, the world or the United States,
A to je tá skúška, ktorej čelí, povieme, svet alebo Spojené štáty.
but the chart says
Ale tá karta hovorí
only Sabbath.
iba sobota.
So we've got that far.
Takže tam sme sa dostali takto
And I
ďaleko.
think it's everything that we've said so far is factual,
A myslím, že všetko, čo sme zatiaľ povedali, je faktické.
no opinions.
Nie sú tu názory.
So the opinion or the question now,
Takže teraz ten názor alebo otázka
the concern
alebo obava
is that if you look at the evidence,
je, že keď sa pozriete na tie dôkazy,
1888,
1888,
we,
my,
God's church,
Božia cirkev,
says the test was Sunday sacredness
hovoríme, že skúška
or
bola
Sabbath keeping,
posvetnosť
depending on how you want to view
nedele,
it. It's the same.
alebo
issue.
zachovávanie soboty, v závislosti od toho, ako to
Two sides of the
vidíte, je
same
to
coin.
ten istý problém. Je to dve strany jednej
And if you
mince.
go back and ask God's church,
Ak sa vrátite a spýtate sa Božej cirkvi,
whether you want to call them the Millerites
či už ich chcete
Ellen
nazvať
White,
Milleritov,
or the Advent movement,
Ellen White, alebo adventné hnutie,
what did they say is the test here?
čo oni povedali, že je skúškou tu?
They're saying it's exactly the same thing.
Oni povedali, že je to presne tá istá vec.
And now we have developed a model
A teraz my sme vyvinuli model,
that says what?
ktorý hovorí čo?
What does our model now say? Simply
hovorí-
put,
Čo jednoducho povedané hovorí náš
So-
model?
our model says
Takže náš
this
model
history-
hovorí,
it's all good and well, it's all fine.
táto história je dobrá, je to všetko správne,
But when you come to this history,
ale keď prídeme do tejto histórie,
forget what the Millerites say,
zabudnite na to, čo povedali Milleriti.
forget what the Advent movement says,
Zabudnite na to, čo povedali
Forget what
čo
Ellen
povedalo
White
adventné
says.
hnutie a zabudnite, čo povedala,
forget
Whiteová.
what the, if we can call
zabudnite
it,
na to,
I know it's not properly formed by then, but the general conference is saying,
čo povedala generálna konferencia,
because they're all saying the same thing.
pretože oni všetci hovoria rovnakú vec.
What are they saying?
Čo oni hovoria?
George, what are they saying?
George,
They're
čo oni
saying
hovoria?
Sabbath.
Oni hovoria sobota.
And now we're saying, forget inspiration,
A oni hovorili, že zabudnite na
everything that
inšpiráciu
you thought
a všetko,
you believed in,
čomu ste verili
all the words that you've read,
a všetky tie slova, ktoré ste čítali.
and we'll develop our own model. Thank you
A
very
my
much.
vytvoríme náš nový model.
And we'll make the test slavery,
A my urobíme tou skúškou otroctvo
human rights.
a ľudské práva.
And that's fundamentally different,
A to je fundamentálne iné,
not just to
odlišné.
a concept or a vacuum that didn't exist.
Nie len k tomu konceptu alebo
It's not like
tomu
any
váku, ktoré
that we've got some
neexistovalo.
history that's blank and we've filled in the space that nobody worked out before.
Nie je to ako keby to je história, ktorá bola prázdna a my sme to naplnili
It's
niečím, čo
well
nikto nepoznal.
documented,
Je to veľmi dobre zdokumentované.
well laid out, properly thought through,
Veľmi dobre podané a
with
premyslené
multiple references.
a s mnohými referenciami.
All leads to a common place,
A všetko vedie k takému,
which says that
spoločnému
the
miestu.
test here is not slavery,
čo hovorí, že tá skúška tu nie je otroctvo,
but Sunday
ale nedela
or Sabbath.
alebo sobota.
And we've only scratched the surface.
A my sme len nejako po povrchu prešli
We haven't even gone into the inspired statements.
a neišli sme ani do tých inšpirovaných vyhlásení.
We won't go into
citátov.
one now because
A pôjdeme teraz do
we're
jedného,
vaguely familiar with them.
pretože sme viac menej s nimi ich poznáme.
But does anybody know, paraphrased, what does Ellen White say or think about this chart when she speaks about its creation?
A vie niekto, čo hovorí Ellen Whiteová o tejto karte,
Because I
keď
asked a
hovorí
question
o tom, ako vznikla, keď som sa spýtal tú otázku
earlier. Is there a
predtým,
mistake or a problem on this chart?
je tam nejaká chyba alebo nejaký problém na tejto karte?
David said no.
A David hovorí, že nie.
In his estimation,
V jeho pohľade.
and I'm asking the same question in Ellen White's estimation.
A ja sa pýtam tú istú otázku na tom odhade
And what does she say
Ellen Whiteovej. A
about
čo
this?
ona hovorí ohľadne tohto?
Anyone on this side?
Hoci kto na tejto strane?
Susan.
Susan.
Inspired by God.
Inšpirovaná Bohom.
Gloria,
Gloria.
do you have your hand up?
No.
Oh, David?
So this was taught way.
Oh, sorry. Susan said inspired by God. I don't know if I got that bit done. Okay.
Takže Suzana hovorí, že to bolo inšpirované
David.
Bohom.
Yeah,
David?
This was taught way back in the movement. And
What David's about to say was taught way back in the movement.
A to, čo hovorí David, je, že to bolo učené v tom hnutí.
we used to, I don't know if this is the exact words, but we would say that God was in the publishment.
So there's this is a paraphrase of an Ellen White statement.
Toto je parafráza vyhlásenia Ellen Whiteovej.
I think it's accurate
A myslím, že je to presné.
that we used to say,
Že my
quoting
sme
Ellen
zvykli
White,
hovoriť a citovať Ellen Whiteovú,
that God was involved in the publishing of this chart.
že Boh bol zapojený vo vydávaní týchto kariet.
Rightly or wrongly,
Správne alebo nesprávne,
we inferred that that meant there's no mistakes here.
my sme si mysleli, že v tom nie sú chyby.
This is a good chart.
Že toto je dobrá karta.
Kathy.
Katy.
I was gonna say, we said God's hand, she said God's hand was in the publish. I think that's the word stuff and was in the publishment.
So Kathy has said basically the same thing.
Katy povedala v podstate tú istú vec
She added a couple of more words.
a pridala tam pár slov.
So I don't know if anybody's good with their fingers, but maybe we'll be able to find that quote.
Neviem, či ste dobrí v
Someone
tom
finds it,
hľadaní,
I'll
ale
put it
možno by
down.
sme mohli nájsť to slovo. Ten citát.
So
Takže
we have a model
máme model,
that says 50 and 88.
ktorý hovorí 1850 a 88.
We have a slavery model and a Sabbath model.
Takže máme model otroctva a model soboty.
And the one we're going to be picking up on is the 50.
A ten, ktorého sa budeme držať, je 50.
Test is slavery or
test,
equality
skúškou
or
je
civil
otroctvo,
human rights.
alebo rovnosť, alebo občianske, alebo ľudské práva.
And it's not the Sabbath Sunday issue.
A nie je to otázka soboty a nedele.
So going back all the way to the beginning,
Takže keď sa vrátime úplne na začiatok,
I'm hoping that we can see that the person's question,
dúfam, že môžeme vidieť, že tá otázka toho, kto sa
I'm not
pýtal,
saying people disagreed with this earlier,
nehovorím, že ľudia s týmto nesúhlasili najprv,
but it has some legitimacy to it.
ale má to nejakú legitimnosť.
There is some theological, prophetic context or reason to ask.
Je tam nejaký teoretický, teologický a prorocký koncept, aby
The question
legitimnosť,
about
že sa to
how do we
pýta.
deal with Sabbath
Tá otázka toho, že ako jednáme so sobotou,
isn't just about this person wanting to do their own will,
nie je to len o tejto osobe, že chce robiť nejakú svoju
have an
vlastnú
easy
vôľu
life.
a mať jednoduchý život.
I don't know what the person was thinking,
Neviem, čo ten človek si myslel,
but what I wanted to show us
ale čo chcem, aby sme videli,
is that there is a prophetic significance behind that question,
že je tu prorocký význam za tou otázkou.
built upon this 1850 model of human rights.
Budovaný na základe tohto modelu 1850 a
If this
ľudských
is
práv.
the test,
Ak toto je skúška,
maybe we should view the Sabbath in a different light.
možno by sme mali vidieť sobotu iným svetlom.
Maybe like good advice.
Možno ako dobrá rada.
Maybe you think it doesn't have the relevancy that it used to have.
Možno si myslíte, že nemá taký význam, ako takú relevanciu, ako
Maybe
to
it's not like
mala.
the subject of wearing trousers or pants for women.
Možno to nie je ako tá téma nosenia nohavíc pre ženy.
Where's that taken from in the scriptures?
Kde toto berieme v písme?
Book first,
Najprv kniha,
Deuteronomy,
5. Mojžišova,
chapter,
kapitola,
Deuteronomy 22,
v Deuteronomii 22
and they beat me to it, verse 5.
a verš 5.
So when we approach that verse,
Takže keď my pristupujeme k tomuto veršu,
what did we say?
tak čo hovoríme?
How does the movement relate to Deuteronomy 22, verse 5, Isabel?
Ako toto hnutie pristupuje k tomu veršu Deuteronomii 22, verš 5?
So I repeat the question. How does the movement
Zopakujem
relate
otázku.
or deal with Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5, which is about, in modern language, women wearing pants or trousers?
Aký má hnutie postoj k tomuto veršu Deuteronomii 22.5, ktorý je o tom, že ženy majú nosiť nohavice? Alebo že nemá nosiť.
So we have, but
nohavice.
we've got some Bible verse. What do we do with that Bible verse?
Takže my máme nejaký biblický verš a čo my s ním urobíme?
If you're not sure, that's fine.
Ak nie si istá, to je v poriadku.
So Isabel says it's an example.
Izabel hovorí, že je to príklad.
It's an example of what?
A je to príklad čoho?
Okay. Anyone else?
Ešte niekto?
So it's about gender roles.
Takže je to o rodových roliach.
So my question is, what do we do with the verse now?
Takže moja otázka je, že čo urobíme s tým veršom?
Go for the best one. Oh, okay. Well, just do this one first then. If it's... Yes. So Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 says women can't wear trousers or pants.
Takže Deuteronomy 22.5 hovorí, že ženy
what do we do with the
nemôžu
verse?
nosiť nohavice. Takže čo my urobíme s tým veršom?
It says that the women are to go to war, because the verse talks about the clothing for men, warriors, that women at that point were not to wear the clothing of the warrior. That's my understanding of how we understand.
So Kathy's speaking now about the larger context. You have to go to the previous chapter, and then you see the context is
Kathy hovorí o
about
väčšom
going to war
kontexte
and gender roles.
a
But
že
still
išla
doesn't
do
address my question,
predošlého
what do we do with the verse? How do we approach it?
kapitoly, kde sa hovorí o tom, že ženy nepôjdu do vojny, ale ja som sa pýtal, že čo my urobíme s tým veršom.
So I'll answer my own question.
Takže zodpovedám si na
We go
svoju
to that
otázku,
verse.
poviem. Pôjdeme do toho verša
And we say it no longer applies to us.
a povieme, už to pre nás
We'll just
neplatí.
say it's an archaic statement. We'll just cross it out and we don't follow that anymore.
A je to archaický výrok, my to len
It's
prečiarkneme
not the
a
only example,
nebudeme
but
to
it's an extreme
nasledovať.
example.
A nie je to jediný, ale je to taký extrémny príklad.
Do we approach or should we approach the Sabbath in the same way?
Mali by sme pristupovať k sobote rovnakým spôsobom?
That's part of what's behind the person's original question.
To je časť tej pôvodnej otázky, ktorá
If
bola
we can go to
položená.
Deuteronomy 22 verse 5 and basically raise it,
Ak by sme išli do Deuteronomy 22.5 a jednoducho by sme to
how do we
vymazali,
approach
vygumovali,
Exodus chapter 20, 8 to 11?
ako budeme pristupovať k Exodu kapitole 20, verše 8 až 11?
In the same way,
Rovnakým spôsobom?
in a modified way,
Alebo modifikovaným
or is
spôsobom?
it still a thus saith the Lord in all of its minutiae, in its intricacies?
Tak to hovorí Pán, alebo je to stále, ako hovorí Pán vo všetkých svojich detailoch.
And I think it's based upon this issue here.
A myslím si, že je to založené na tomto
The
probléme.
movement no longer
že hnutie
speaks about Sabbath being the test.
už nehovorí o tom, že skúška je sobota.
It now speaks about equality being the test.
Teraz sa hovorí o tom, že rovnosť
And
je
what do we do
skúška.
with the fourth commandment now?
A čo my urobíme s tým 4. prikázaním teraz?
Is it in the same category as a dress code,
Je to v tej rovnakej kategórii ako dress code?
or do we just look at the principles of that commandment,
Alebo sa len pozrieme na princípy toho
or do we break it
prikázania?
line by line and still follow all of those rules?
Alebo budeme stále
And before we do
nasledovať tie
that, we have the
pravidlá?
reference for this.
Predtým, ako to spravíme, tu máme odkaz na toto.
Manuscript Releases,
MR,
volume 13,
13. zväzok,
page 359, paragraph 1.
strana 359, druhý
Okay,
odstavec.
so that's the reference.
Takže to je ten odkaz.
And someone here has read it, and I think it's accurate to what we said before. I'll paraphrase.
Myslím, že je to presné, to, čo niekto povedal.
That's fine. Okay, so back to the point I was just raised a minute ago. Someone had their hand up.
Takže naspäť k tomu bodu, o ktorom som hovoril, niekto mal zdvihnutú ruku.
Still moral obligation.
The Susan said the Sabbath is still a moral obligation,
Susan hovorí, že sobota je stále morálna
but it's not a
zásada,
test.
povinnosť, ale nie je to skúška.
So when you say it's not a test, is it a test to you?
Keď hovorí, že to nie je skúška, je to skúška pre teba?
Or when you say a moral obligation, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Keď povieš morálna povinnosť, nie som si istý, čo ty myslíš.
Still our moral duty to keep it.
So she says it's our moral duty to keep it. Susan, if you don't keep
Takže je
it,
naša
what will
morálna
happen to you?
povinnosť to dodržať. Ak to nebudeš dodržiavať, čo sa ti stane?
A slap on the wrist or the lake of fire?
Dostaneš po prstoch alebo ohnivé jazero.
So Susan's not sure.
Takže Susan si nie
She's not
je
sure if keeping Sabbath is a
istá,
life and death test any longer.
dodržiavanie soboty je skúškou života a smrti.
Is that fair representation?
Je to férová reprezentácia?
She says, yes, it was an accurate representation of her thought, but there are consequences.
Ona hovorí, že áno, je to presná reprezentácia, ale sú
But you're not sure if the
dôsledky.
consequences is life and death any longer.
A nie si istá, či tie dôsledky sú
She nodded.
život a smrť.
But you used to believe it.
Ale verila si tomu kedysi.
Back in the day, you used to believe no Sabbath, death,
V minulosti si tomu
Eternal
verila, že keď nie je sobota, tak smrť. Večná smrť,
I presume.
predpokladám.
She said yes.
Hovorí
So
áno.
this is what's behind, I think, this person's question originally.
Takže toto si myslím, že je za tou pôvodnou otázkou toho,
And
kto
the
sa
more we
pýtal.
dig down into this issue,
A čím viac sa nejak kopeme v
seems
tomto
that
probléme, tak
if we're
vyzerá
not a
to,
movement in crisis, we're a movement that's questioning something that we thought was really fundamental.
že ak by sme sa pýtali niečo, čo ako hnutie, niečo, čo je naozaj fundamentálne,
So that's why I said we should be concerned about what we have put onto this board.
to je dôvod, prečo som povedal, že by sme
Sorry.
mali mať obavy hodne toho, čo sme dali na túto tabulu.
Examples, right? But how do you draw?
So Gloria said that
Yes, okay.
Gloria hovorí,
I
že,
and Isabel,
že ja a Izabel,
I don't know who came first,
neviem, kto prišiel prvý,
has said that the Bible is a book of examples, not principles.
sme povedali, že Biblia je kniha príkladov a nie princípov.
So with the Sabbath,
Carry on.
so with the Sabbath, we draw out the principle of that to understand how to keep it or no.
Okay, so Gloria said, does that mean that we're supposed to take the principle of the Sabbath
Takže znamená to, že my by sme mali zobrať princíp soboty,
as opposed to what, Gloria?
Example.
As opposed to the example.
ako
So what I thought you
Opak
that
toho
you were going to
príkladu.
say,
a to, čo som si myslel, že
should we
povieš,
take the spirit of the law
mali by sme brať ducha toho zákona,
or the letter of the law?
alebo to doslovnosť
It
toho
comes
zákona.
up depending on
V závislosti od toho,
when you
či
evangelize with people, that issue
evangelizujete
comes up
ľudí,
often, or
ale
conservatives
tento problém
and
sa
liberals.
často objavuje u konzervatívcov a liberálov.
The spirit or the letter.
Duch alebo doslovný.
So I never thought there was a difference between them,
Ja neviem, že či niekedy bol medzi tým rozdiel.
but I guess some people think that there is. Claudia.
Claudio?
Why I would be concerned because with what I know now, in the past, they shifted and they didn't carry a prophetic message. So if they would find out that 1863 was in the 2520.
I'm going to have to stop you here. It's
Musím
too
sa tu
much and I need
zastaviť. Je
to
to
have it
príliš dlhé,
contained so
potrebujem
I
to
can
skrátiť.
understand, so they can say what point you're making. So, Claudio, are you suggesting that
Claudio navrhuje,
that God's church in the past made some kind
Božia
of
cirkev v
mistake?
minulosti
Is that what
urobila
you're suggesting?
chyby? To navrhuješ?
Claudio said yes. He thinks there was some mistakes
Claudio hovorí
made.
áno. On povedal, že on si myslí, že boli nejaké chyby spravené.
If they had studied and researched things properly,
Ak oni študovali a skúmali tie veci
Claudio, what would have
poriadne,
happened if they had done things properly? What would they
Claudio, čo
have
by
found?
oni našli, keby študovali tie veci poriadne?
And also studying that more.
So you're speaking about the 2520, I understand that. How does it relate to our study?
Takže rozumiem tomu, že hovoríš o 25-20 a aký to má súvis s našou štúdiou.
Because if they would understand that, to do the same thing you did in 2012, and understand that 2014 was the Sunday law, but not the Sunday law, Sunday Sabbath. You know, the principle behind all the Sunday laws is oppression, church and state, the mark of the beast.
Okay, so what Claudio has said
Takže to, čo povedal Claudio,
is that the whole approach to this
je, že celý prístup k tomuto
is one about human oppression.
je o
And if you
tej
put that framework on top of
o tom
this,
utlačení
it
ľudí.
explains all of these problems.
Ak by ste dali tento rámec na toto, tak to vysvetľuje všetky tie problémy.
So I don't know if people see it that way or they agree.
Takže neviem, či to ľudia vidia týmto spôsobom a že či súhlasia.
George, do you have your hand up?
George,
Okay.
mal si hore ruku?
Someone else? Okay. Any other thoughts or comments?
Máte ešte nejaké myšlienky alebo komentáre?
Gloria.
So, to answer to the person that asked that question, how would you answer it?
So if you're asking about so the question, Gloria said, how would I answer this person's question?
Gloria hovorí, že ako by som ja zodpovedala túto otázku tej osobe.
I'm not going to answer that question.
Ja nebudem odpovedať na tú otázku.
And the reason is because in some people's mind, my
Dôvod je,
answers carry more weight than other people's answers.
že akože Parminder nebude odpovedať na tú otázku, pretože dôvod je, že ľudia si
And that's
myslia,
okay in
že
some
jeho váha tej
contexts.
odpovede
I
je väčšia
understand
ako odpoveď druhých.
But the reason that I don't want to answer it in this particular case
Dôvod, prečo ja to nechcem zodpovedať v tomto konkrétnom príklade,
is because I wanted us to see this point.
pretože ja chcem, aby sme videli tento bod.
And I wanted us to go beyond, and I hope you understand what I'm about to say,
A dúfam, že rozumiete, čo chcem povedať.
to go beyond the carnal nature of the question.
Aby sme išli za nejakú
Even
podstatu
though it
alebo
may have just been a
prírodzenosť tej
practical thing that
otázky.
they were looking an answer for,
Je to taká praktická vec, že na čo oni hľadali odpoveď.
I want us to know why they're asking that question.
Chcem, aby sme vedeli, že prečo sa pýtajú tú
And I
otázku.
think in the consciousness of members in this movement, there has been a radical shift in our thinking.
A myslím, že v podvedomí tohto hnutia
And so
bola
Gloria's question to me
radikálny presun v tomto
wasn't
hnutí,
just about a
našom
member
myslení.
attending the class on Sabbath,
A nebolo to, že o tom, že
it's whether or not this
človek-
radical shift in change,
Stane sa.
this radical change in thinking
A je to o tom, že či tá radikálna
as
zmena v tom
we
myslení,
view the Sabbath,
ako my vidíme sobotu,
if I think that's a good idea or a bad idea.
či ja si myslím, že či je to dobrá myšlienka,
And
dobrý nápad alebo zlý.
I don't think it would be safe for me to answer that
A myslím, že by to nebolo pre mňa bezpečné to
without giving
odpovedať.
all of you an opportunity to think about the
Bez toho, aby som
issues
dal
at
všetkým
stake.
vám príležitosť, aby ste o tom mysleli, o tomto probléme. Aby ste o tom rozmýšľali.
In whatever shape or form, to whatever degree,
A v akékoľvek forme,
the
alebo
fact that
tvare,
we're
alebo v
discussing this,
akékoľvek úrovni,
the
a
fact
to, že
that
o
we're
tom
looking
hovoríme
at the
teraz,
chart,
tá skutočnosť, že sa pozeráme na tú
we see
kartu
the tension between Sabbath and
a vidíme
slavery.
tam tú tenziu alebo to napätie medzi
We look at
sobotou
all of
a
Ellen White's writings
otroctvom. Pozreli sme sa na všetky citáty Ellen Whiteovej
and questioned them.
a
The fact that we're doing that,
akoby spochybnili sme ich a v skutočnosti to, že to robíme,
as a minimum, I think it should concern and worry us,
a myslím, že to nám
so
to by
that
nás
when we
malo
come to whatever conclusion we come
znepokojiť.
to,
Takže akékoľvek závery, ku ktorým prídeme,
that we're happy about that.
a sme s
Because
tým spokojní,
4 years ago,
pretože 4 roky dozadu,
3 to 4 years ago, depending on how you do your
alebo
calculation,
3 alebo 4 roky,
we threw away a fundamental Bible verse.
zahodili fundamentálny biblický verš.
We took Ellen White quotes and just erased them.
A zobrali sme Ellen Whiteovej citát a proste sme ich
We
vymazali.
said we're good to go. We are not only
Povedali
correct
sme-
to do that, we have to do that.
Nie len, že to je správne to urobiť, ale my to musíme urobiť.
And no one objected.
A nikto sa nesťažoval. Nikto nenamietal.
Talking about wearing pants or trousers.
Ohľadne toho nosenia nohavíc.
And I don't know if men and women in this movement
A ja neviem, či
realized
muži
what
alebo
we've
ženy
done.
v tomto hnutí si uvedomujú, čo sme spravili.
Because when we start doing or looking at Exodus chapter 20,
Pretože keď sme sa začali pozerať na
we
Exodus
get
20,
confronted with exactly the same issues.
tak my sme konfrontovaní s presne rovnakými
Do
problémami.
we view Sabbath differently?
Vidíme sobotu inak?
The test,
To je skúška.
is it a moral obligation or is it a test?
Je to povinnosť,
If
alebo
we're
je
not
to skúška?
persuaded that it's a life and death issue,
Ak nie sme presvedčení, že je to skúška alebo
are we
téma života a smrti,
comfortable with our thought processes?
sme si istí s našimi
Susan,
myšlenkovými procesmi.
the subject
Susan.
of equality.
Téma rovnosti.
So if a man or a woman
Ak
is
muž alebo
either the
žena
patriarch or the matriarch of their
je
sphere of influence,
patriarcha alebo matriarcha z tej sfére vplyvu,
is that a life and death issue?
je to téma života a smrti?
So Susan said yes.
Takže Susan hovorí áno.
So you're burning the lake of fire for patriarchy,
Takže je tu nejaké to ohnivé
Yeah.
jazero pre
she said yes,
patriarchát? Áno, no hovorí áno.
but she's not sure if you're burning the lake of fire for breaking the Sabbath.
Ale ona nie je si istá, že či je to ohnivé jazero
not
aj
picking on
pre
her.
porušovanie soboty. A nevyvolávam ju,
But if she's thinking that,
ale ak si ona myslí toto,
if her thinking has changed that much
ak sa to myslenie zmenilo tak veľmi
on something that identifies who we are, we're Seventh-day Adventists,
a niekoho, kto sa identifikuje ako adventisti 7.
I'm sure
dňa,
she's not the only one.
A som si istý, že ona nie je jediná.
And how we view the Sabbath
A ako my vidíme
is
sobotu,
not just a moral issue.
nie je to len morálna otázka,
It's also a prophetic one.
ale je to tiež prorocká.
And if we start changing our relationship morally with something,
Ak my začneme meniť náš vzťah morálne
we
s
begin
niečím,
changing our relationship with that issue prophetically as well. We must
tak
change
my
it
začneme
prophetically.
meniť aj prorocky tú tému alebo ten problém. Musíme to zmeniť prorocky.
If you're not sure about that,
Ak nie ste
just
si tým
work
istí,
through the pants or the trouser issue in your mind. Work through the steps and the logic, and you'll see
prejdite si
that point.
Prejdite si týmto problémom v otázke toho nosenia nohavíc krok za krokom a budete vidieť tú pointu.
If you change your morality, you change your prophecy.
Ak zmeníte svoju morálnosť, tak
vice
zmeníte
versa.
aj proroctvo a naopak.
If you change your prophecy, it affects your morality.
Ak zmeníte proroctvo, tak má to vplyv na morálku.
Sabbath issue, would you say morally conservative but socially liberal?
So Gloria said, with respect to the
Gloria
Sabbath,
hovorí,
is it morally conservative and socially liberal?
s rešpektom na sobotu je to morálne, konzervatívne a sociálne liberálne.
I'm going to show my ignorance now.
Teraz ukážem moju ignoranciu.
I'm not sure what that means.
Like,
A nie som si istý, čo to znamená.
Okay.
so you keep the Sabbath the way that you consciously think that is right, but let others do whatever they need to do because you don't know their situation, their circumstances.
So Gloria said,
Tak Gloria povedala,
Gloria said, morally conservative, socially liberal means
morálne konzervatívne a sociálne liberálne znamená,
you are strict about the issue yourself
že ste striktní
and you don't
ohľadne
judge
tých
other people.
pravidiel na seba, ale nesúdite ďalších ľudí.
So if that were the case,
Ak by toto bol ten prípad,
then Sabbath would no longer be a test for the world.
potom sobota by nebola skúškou pre svet.
It only becomes a test for Adventists.
Ale bola by to skúška len pre adventistov. Čo by potom znamenalo,
if someone wanted to become an Adventist or join the movement,
že ak niekto by sa chcel stať adventistom alebo chcel by sa pridať do
are we able
hnutia,
to test them on their Sabbath keeping?
sme schopní ich skúšať na zachovávanie
No.
soboty? Alebo nie?
You're not sure. Samuel?
Nie som si istá.
We can't test
Samuel?
them.
Nemôžeme ich skúšať.
I think it's just the logic of that. Forget the morality. The logic would tell you,
Tá logika vám povie,
if we say you're free to do what you want and we won't
ak my
monitor
povieme,
it
že
or
ste
check it or
slobodní
judge it,
robiť si, čo chcete a my to nebudeme monitorovať, kontrolovať alebo súdiť,
then it no longer becomes a test for them.
potom to sa pre nich nestáva
And
skúškou.
if you get to that stage,
A ak sa dostanete k tomuto bodu,
it's a skip and a step to say it's not even a test for you.
je to krok k tomu, aby sme povedali, že
Because what
to nie je
you
skúškou
now
ani pre
have
nás.
begun to do
Pretože to, čo teraz začnete robiť,
is have a two-tier system.
začínate robiť,
One
je, že
rule for
máte
them.
nejaký
One rule for me.
dvojitý systém, jeden pre nich a jeden pre nás.
And that becomes really problematic, I think.
A to sa stáva veľmi problematické, si myslím.
Any other thoughts?
Nejaké myšlienky?
Okay, so I wasn't expecting us to come to a conclusion in these studies.
Takže ja som neočakával, že prídeme k záverom tejto štúdie,
But I wanted to highlight
ale chcel som vyzdvihnúť
several points.
niekoľko bodov.
So I wanted to highlight several points
Chcel som vyzdvihnúť niekoľko bodov,
that I think members in the movement have not considered.
o ktorých si myslím, že členovia hnutia to
Or
nezvážili,
thought about and
alebo nemysleli o
got to a
nich.
place
a
where they see what the conclusion is.
Nešli na tie miesta, kde nachádzali tie závery.
So this is not a judgment on any individual person,
Takže toto nie je súd nad nejakým jednotlivcom,
but if this group that we have here in person was a representation of our movement,
ale ak táto skupina, ktorá je tu, by bola reprezentácia nášho hnutia,
we're not sure if it's okay if a school forces you to attend a class on Sabbath, whether it's okay to say yes or no. We're not sure about that.
nie sme si istí, či je v poriadku, ak škola nás núti ísť na nejakú skúšku v sobotu, tak nie sme si tým ako hnutie istí.
We're questioning whether or not Sabbath is even a life and death issue,
A my máme otázku, že či vôbec je
which I
sobota
would then argue
problémom života a smrti, čo by som ja potom
means it's
argumentoval,
not a test to join this movement.
že to nie je potom skúška
And if it's not
pridania sa k
a
tomuto
test for them to
hnutiu.
join the movement, it can't be a test for us to remain in the movement.
Ak to nie je skúška na to, aby sa ľudia pridali k hnutiu, tak potom to nie je ani skúška pre
once you
nás,
get
aby
to
sme
that
zostali v
stage,
hnutí. A ak sa dostanete do tohto bodu,
the fourth commandment would go to the same place as Deuteronomy 22 verse 5.
štvrté prikázanie by sa dostalo do toho istého bodu,
Because
ako
do women in our
Deuteronomy
movement have
22:5.
to wear, I keep saying trousers, but pants if you forget. Do women have to wear trousers all the time?
pretože musia ženy nosiť v našom hnutí stále
No,
nohavice?
they can wear what they
Nie.
want now.
Oni môžu nosiť, čo chcú teraz.
So women have understood what those verses say
Takže ženy porozumeli, čo tie verše
and
hovoria,
have come to a place where they have freedom to do what they want.
a prišlo to do bodu, že oni majú slobodu robiť, čo
Which
chcú.
means trouser wearing or pant wearing is no longer a test.
Čo znamená, že nosenie nohavíc, alebo áno, že nosenie nohavíc už nie je
It was never a
skúškou.
test even in 19.
To nikdy nebolo skúškou ani v 19. roku.
It served as a symbol of something more profound, more deeper.
Ono to slúžilo ako symbol niečoho oveľa základnejšieho alebo hlbšieho.
So back in Germany, it was framed as a test.
Takže v tom Nemecku to bolo rámcované ako
And I still
skúška.
think that was appropriate.
Ja si stále myslím, že to bolo správne.
So the question is, do we approach Sabbath keeping in the same way?
Takže otázka je, že či my pristupujeme k zachovávaniu soboty rovnakým spôsobom.
We have a Nethinim join us.
Máme netinejcov,
We
ktorí,
explain
alebo máme
all of
netinejca,
our
ktorý
philosophies and
sa
our
pridá.
ideas, our theological
Vysvetlíme
position.
všetky filozofie, všetky myšlienky, všetky teologické pozície
Do we say to them, let's check what you're wearing?
a povieme im, pozrime sa na to, čo
Would we do that?
máte oblečené. Urobili by sme to?
Some people are adamant, like, no, we don't. And some people are looking, I'm not sure, maybe we do.
Niekto vyzerá, že nie, určite nie, a niekto
We
vyzerá
don't
tak,
check,
že možno,
are you
že áno.
wearing trousers or skirts? We don't do that, do we?
My nekontrolujeme, že či nosia nohavice alebo sukne.
So it's not a
Robíme
test,
to? Takže to nie je
but we
skúška.
would explain the concept
Ale
of gendered
vysvetlili by
clothing
sme
and the world in which we live.
koncept toho rodového obliekania a toho sveta, v ktorom žijeme.
So So if we're okay, we're together on that point.
Takže ak súhlasíme v tomto
How do we
bode,
approach the fifth commandment?
ako my pristupujeme k 5.
Do we
prikázaniu?
say, what is the fifth commandment?
Aké je 5. prikázanie?
Honor your parents.
Uh,
So we might have a
Ctíte svojich
discussion of what that
rodičov.
means, but do we say that's still in
Takže my
force?
môžeme mať diskusiu o tom, že čo to znamená, ale myslíte, že stále je to v platnosti?
For sure we would,
Určite áno.
because we could easily tuck it into the concept of civil rights.
Pretože jednoducho by sme to spojili s tým konceptom občianskych práv.
And if this Nethinim says, well, I abuse my parents,
A ak tento netinec by povedal, ja zneužívam môjho
can I join
rodiča,
you?
môžem sa k vám
We'd say,
pridať?
no, it's a test of fellowship.
A my povieme, nie, je to skúška
And someone
spoločenstva.
said earlier, if you're
A niekto
abusive,
povedal predtým,
you
že
can't
ak
go to
ste,
heaven and you'll go into the lake of fire.
ak zneužívate niekoho, tak nemôžete ísť do neba, ale pôjdete do onivého jazera.
So the question is, let's go to the fourth commandment.
Takže otázka je, že poďme k
Is
tomu
that a test
4.
of fellowship or
prikázaniu.
not?
Je to skúška spoločenstva alebo nie?
When we talk about morally conservative, socially liberal,
Keď hovoríme o morálne konzervatívnom, sociálne liberálnom,
because when we start viewing the Sabbath that way,
pretože ak začneme vidieť sobotu týmto spôsobom,
we get to the place where we don't have the Sabbath.
tak dostaneme sa do bodu, kedy nemáme
We
sobotu.
acknowledge it
My to
as a historical fact,
vyznáme
as a
ako historický
past
fakt,
moral imperative,
ako
but we get to the place where we say
morálny,
it's no longer applicable.
ale my dojdeme k záveru, alebo na miesto, že to nie je morálne
The
aplikovateľné.
questioner asked the movement.
A ten pýtajúci
If
sa
you're
pýta
the
na
movement,
hnutie.
or at least part of it,
Ak ste vy hnutie, alebo čas
you
z
and I
neho, vy alebo ja,
need to come to a place that we understand our relationship to the Sabbath.
musíme prísť na miesto do bodu, kedy rozumieme nášmu vzťahu k
And how it
sobote.
fits into the prophetic model that we have.
A ako to pasuje do toho prorockého, zapadá do
When we
toho
talk
prorockého
about the
modelu, ktorý máme.
restoration in this
Keď
Eden to
hovoríme
Eden model,
o obnove tohto modelu z Edena do Edena.
we've spoken about civil rights being restored.
My hovoríme o občianskych právach, ktoré boli obnovené.
Ellen White calls it what?
Ellen Whiteová to nazýva,
What institution is that?
aká je to
In her words.
inštitúcia? Jej slovami.
No, an institution. She says, as it was then, so it's going to be now. So there's
Ona
some
hovorí, ako to bolo
restoration that
vtedy,
needs to
tak to bude
happen.
aj teraz. Takže musí sa udiať obnova.
We have slavery and civil rights, but she uses the
Máme otroctvo a
word,
občianske
a relationship.
práva, ale ona používa to slovo vzťah
marriage.
a manželstvo.
So yeah, so what I was talking about was marriage.
Takže to, o čom som hovoril, bolo manželstvo,
So, which is a social construction.
čo je sociálna konštrukcia.
So she says marriage
ona hovorí,
to marriage.
Z manželstva do manželstva.
And then in our group they said it's actually two things.
A v našej skupine sa hovorí, že sú tam vlastne
And
dve
David
veci.
said the second one was the Sabbath.
A David hovorí, že tá druhá bola sobota.
So I'll write seventh as the seventh day. And as you know,
Napíšem tu
this
7
model
ako
here
7. deň.
that
tento
predated the
model
Eden to
tu
Eden model
bol to teda model z Edena do Edena.
is exactly the same model.
Je to presne ten istý model.
So the Eden to Eden model was not something new.
Takže model z Edena do Edena
It
nebolo
was
niečo
in the
nové.
consciousness of this movement a long
Bolo to v
time
povedomí
ago.
tohto hnutia už dávno predtým.
It was just framed
Alebo už
differently
dávno.
and less
Ale
well
bolo to
refined.
len inak zarámcované a bolo to menej definované.
In the same way,
Menej dobre. Rovnakým
we knew
spôsobom
about 50. Its
vedeli
connection
sme o
to the chart,
1850 a tom spojitosti
which was an
s tým
evangelistic tool
grafom, ktorý bol
to go to the world
evangelistický nástroj,
and
aby
warn
išli
them
do
about the
sveta
second advent,
a aby varovali ľudí o druhom
which
príchode,
is the context of the Sunday law,
čo je kontext nedelného zákona,
which is why it's there.
čo je dôvod, prečo je to tu.
And if you go to 1848,
A ak by ste išli do 1848,
Ellen White's going to begin to prepare the church for 50
Ellen Whiteová bude pripravovať cirkev na
because
1850,
there's trouble in the world,
pretože sú problémy vo svete,
political agitation, and
politická
Adventists are
agitácia
saying,
a adventisti hovoria,
what are they saying? If we know the
čo oni
history,
hovoria, ak poznáme tieto dejiny.
this is the end.
Toto je
This
koniec,
is the Sunday law.
toto je nedelný zákon.
She says, it's not that.
A ona hovorí, to nie je to.
She says, this is the prelude to what's about to happen.
Ona hovorí, že toto je
We've known all of
nejaká-
this a long time ago.
toto sme vedeli už dávno predtým. Ona hovorí, že
There's
toto je
more
nejaká predzvesť
continuity
toho, čo sa
between
má
the
stať.
messages of Elder Jeff and Elder Tess
A je
that
tam viac
than some
tej
people
continuity
appreciate.
medzi starším Jeffom a staršou Tess.
So when we come back to this modeling,
Takže keď prichádzame k tomuto modelovaniu,
many of us, prior to what I've just drawn there,
mnohí z nás predtým, ako som
would
predtým, ako
say
som toto nakreslil, by
it's
povedali,
only this,
že je to len toto.
relationships,
Vzťahy
based upon this modeling here of the
na základe
1850.
tohto modelu tu 1850.
And we'd say, well, Ellen White talks about twin institutions, but we'll do away with that.
A my sme povedali, Ellen Whiteová hovorí o dvojitej
But we
inštitúcie,
constructed
ale
a
my to
chiastic
necháme.
structure based upon that Ellen White quote.
Ale my sme vybudovali tú chiastickú štruktúru na základe tých citátov, alebo toho
Before
citátu
the
Ellen
Eden to
Whiteovej,
Eden model was ever developed.
predtým, ako vôbec bol vyvinutý
It's
tento model
crude,
z
it's
Edena do Edena.
basic,
Je to základné,
but it follows the same principle.
a bolo to také základné, jednoduché, ale
And if
nasledovalo
it's
to
a
rovnaké princípy.
methodological issue here,
A ak je to metodologický problém tu,
it's not so easy to throw it away.
nie je to také jednoduché vyhodiť to.
So we're going to close now.
Takže teraz to ukončíme.
We have a study tomorrow,
Máme zajtra štúdium
and we'll recap
a my to zhrnieme,
and see
zopakujeme
if we can discuss this a little bit more or move on to a new subject. I'm not quite sure
a
yet.
uvidíme, že či sa budeme s tým zaoberať ešte viac, alebo sa dáme na
Let's pray.
ďalšiu tému. Nie som si ešte istý. Pomodlíme sa.
Dear Lord,
Drahý Pane,
we know and we believe that you are in control.
my vieme a veríme, že ty máš veci pod kontrolou.
We know that you are leading us along the narrow path.
My vieme, že ty nás vedieš po tej úzkej ceste.
The midnight cry behind us
Polnočné volanie je za nami
and Jesus in front of us.
a Ježiš pred nami.
Help us to have the confidence
Pomôž nám mať
to
istotu,
believe that we are still being led
veriť v to, že stále sme vedení
by our past experience and what the
našou minulou
future
skúsenosťou
is before us.
a to, čo je v budúcnosti pred nami.
May we not be a movement in crisis,
Daj, nech nie sme hnutie v kríze.
but may we continue to be led and directed by your will
Ale nech sme vedení a
wherever
nasmerovaní
it
tvojou
may
vôľou
lead us.
a kdekoľvek nás budeš viesť.
As we wrestle with our relationship to you,
Keď my zápasíme s našim vzťahom k tebe
to your laws and your commandments,
a k tvojim zákonom a k tvojim prikázaniam,
your counsel and your advice,
tvojim radám a
I ask that we
radám.
would hear your voice
Modlím sa, aby sme mi počuli tvoj hlas,
as it permeates through our movement,
ako zaznieva v našom hnutí,
and that we would come to a proper and right conclusion,
aby sme my prišli k
not just on
správnym
the Sabbath,
záverom. Nielen ohľadne soboty,
but on all the issues that confront us.
ale všetkých tých problémov, ktoré nás
In
konfrontujú.
Jesus' name, amen.
V Ježišovom mene. Amen.
Thank you, everybody. I'll hand you over to the host now.
Ďakujem všetkým.